Hello everyone! Welcome to the stream! Today we're gonna be reading the rest of the book for Alice Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland. Yeah. I'm your Starlight host, Fukustar, and this is my little Starlight right here. Which is you guys. Yeah. So, why don't we get started? We left off in chapter 6. And we should be able to complete the... Let me just do a quick search. Chapter 6. We're in chapter 6. There's how many chapters on this thing? Let's see. Actually, we're a little under half the book, actually. It might take us some time still, but... Trying to find the last chapter number. Getting some spoilers right now. No, I'm spoiling it for myself. Such an old book I've never read actually before. Scroll. Yeah, there's still quite a bit of book. Chapter 12. I think we're in 6. Yeah, we're exactly at half. Except we haven't finished chapter 6, so it'd be like we have 7 chapters left. Okay, so why don't we get started? Okay. Nice. I got the rain on. Let me know if it's too loud or if it's too low. Okay. Let's see, I'm just adjusting my microphone here. Alright. Oh, it's a little too loud. Okay. Let's see. Let's get started then. Chapter 6. It's all Big and Pepper. For a minute or two, she stood looking at the house and wondering what to do next. When suddenly, a footman in livery came running out of the woods. She considered him to be a footman because he was in livery. What is livery? Otherwise, judging by his face only, she would have called him a fish, and rapped loudly at the door with his knuckles. It was opened by another footman in livery, with a round face and large eyes, like a frog. And both footmen, Alice noticed, had powdered hair and curled all over their heads. She felt very curious to know what it was all about, and crept a little way out of the wood to listen. So this is livery. There's a nice picture or illustration of 2 frogs, very fancy frogs, just like myself. They're wearing a bow too. Or a ribbon. They're both wearing bow ties. Nice. And they're carrying a huge letter. And it has a crown in it, just like mine. Are they delivering a letter to me? I never had notice of this letter. My goodness, Goodman. The fish footman began by producing from under his arm a great letter, nearly as large as himself. And this he handed over to the other, saying, in a solemn tone, "For the Duchess, an invitation from the Queen to play croquet." The frogman repeated, in the same solemn tone, only changing the order of the words a little. "From the Queen, an invitation for the Duchess to play croquet." Then they both bowed low, and their curls got entangled together. Alice laughed so much at this that she had to run back into the woods for fear of their hunting her. And when she peeped out, the fish footman was gone, and the other was sitting on the ground near the door, staring stupidly up into the sky. Alice went timidly up to the door and knocked. "There's no sort of use in knocking," said the footman, "and that for 2 reasons. First, because I'm on the same side of the door as you are. Secondly, because they're making such a noise inside. No one could possibly hear you. And certainly there was a most extraordinary noise going on within. A constant howling and sneezing, and every now and then a great crash, as if a dish or kettle had been broken to pieces. Please then, said Alice, how am I to get in? There might be some sense in your knocking. The footman went on without attending to her, if we had a door between us. For instance, if you were inside, you might knock, and I could let you out, you know? He was looking up into the sky all the time he was speaking, and this Alice thought decidedly uncivil. But perhaps he can't help it, she said to herself. His eyes are so very nearly at the top of his head. But at any rate, he might answer questions. How am I to get in? She repeated aloud. I shall sit here, the footman remarked, till tomorrow. At this moment, the door of the house opened, and a large plate of skimming out straight out of the footman's hand. It just grazed his nose and broke to pieces against one of the trees behind him. Or next day, maybe. The footman continued in the same tone exactly as if nothing happened. How am I to get in? Asked Alice again in louder tone. Are you to get in at all? Said the footman. That's the first question, you know. It was, no doubt. Only Alice did not like to be told so. It's really dreadful, she muttered to herself, the way all the creatures argue. It's enough to drive you on crazy. The footman seemed to think this is a good opportunity for repeating his remark, with variations. I shall sit here, he said, on and off, for days and days. Well, what am I to do? Said Alice. Anything you like, said the footman, and began whistling. Oh, there's no use talking to him, said Alice desperately. He's perfectly idiotic. And she opened the door and went in. The door led right into the large kitchen, which was full of smoke from one end to the other. The Duchess was sitting on the three-legged stool in the middle, nursing a baby. The cook was leaning over the fire, stirring a large cauldron, which seemed to be full of soup. And then we have a nice illustration of the Duchess holding her baby, looking straight at Alice. And then someone in the back, who was? The cook. It just says the cook was just cooking. Let her cook. There's certainly too much pepper in that soup, Alice said to herself, as well as she could for sneezing. There was certainly too much of it in the air. Even the Duchess sneezed occasionally, and the baby was sneezing and howling alternatively without a moment's pause. The only thing in the kitchen that did not sneeze were the cook and the large cat which was sitting on the hearth and grinning from ear to ear. Please, will you tell me, said Alice a little timidly, for she was not quite sure whether it was good manners for her to speak first. Why your cat grins like that? It's Cheshire cat, said the Duchess, and that's why. Pig? Oh my goodness, so rude. She said the last word with such a sudden violence that Alice quite jumped, but she saw in another moment that it was addressed to the baby, and not her. So she took a courage and went again. I didn't know that Cheshire... Wait, how do you say that? Cheshire? Cheshire? Cats always grinned. In fact, I didn't know that cats could grin at all. They all can, said the Duchess, and most of them do. I don't know anyone that do that too. Alice said very politely, feeling quite pleased that to have got into the conversation. You don't know much, said the Duchess, and that's a fact. Alice did not at all like the tone of this remark, and thought it would be as well to introduce some other subject to the conversation. While she was trying to fix on one, the cook took the cauldron of the soup off the fire, and at once set to work throwing everything within her reach at the Duchess and the baby. The fire irons came first. There's like crumbs on the book. You see this crumb over here? Oh, you can see the little crumb in here. Someone was eating while scanning this. I wonder if they're cooking something nice. Then followed a shower of saucepans, plates, and dishes. The Duchess took no notice of them even when they hit her. And the baby was howling so much already that it was quite impossible to say whether its blows hurt it or not. "Oh, please, mind what you're doing," cried Alice, jumped up and down in an agony of terror. "Oh, there goes a precious nose," as an unusual large saucepan flew close by it and barely nearly carried it off. "If everybody minded their own business," the Duchess said in the horse's growl, "the world will go around a deal faster than it does." "Which will not be an advantage," said Alice, who felt very glad to get an opportunity of showing off a little of her knowledge. "Just think what work it will make it. Just think what work it will make with day and night. You see, the Earth takes 24 hours to turn around its axis." "Talking of axis," said the Duchess, "chop off her head." "What?" Alice glanced rather anxiously at the cook to see if she meant to take the hint, but the cook was busily engaged in stirring the soup and did not seem to be listening, so she ventured to go on again. 24 hours, I think, or is it 12? Oh, don't bother me," said the Duchess. "I never could abide figures." And with that, she began nursing her child again, singing a sort of lullaby to it as she did so, and giving it a violent check at the end of every line. Can you? I've never seen this before, but can you actually do... She's talking to her baby, nursing her child again, singing a sort of lullaby to it. Can you use it for babies or babies' items? Or is this some sort of spoiler for something? "Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes." Now they're using pronouns. "He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases." Chorus, in which the cook and the baby joined. "Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow." While the Duchess sang the second verse of the song, she kept tossing the baby violently up and down. And the poor little thing howled so that Alice could hardly hear the words, and here's a little crumb. "I speak severely to my boy. I beat him when he sneezes, for he can truly enjoy the pepper when he pleases." And the chorus. "Wow, wow, wow." "Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow." "Here, you may nurse it a bit, if you like," the Duchess said to Alice, flinging the baby at her as she spoke. "I must go on and get ready to play croquet with the Queen." And she hurried out of the room. The cook threw a frying pan after her as she went out, but it just missed her. Alice got the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer-shaped little creature, and held out its arms and legs in all directions. "Just like a starfish." "A starfish! It's a baby starfish," thought Alice. The poor little thing was snorting like a steam engine when she caught it, and kept doubling itself up and straightening itself out again. So altogether, for the first minute or two, it was as much as she could do to hold it. As soon as she had made out the proper way of nursing it, which was to twist it up into a sort of knot, and then keep it tight holding of its right ear and left foot, so as to prevent its undoing itself, she carried out into the open air. "If I don't take this child away with me," thought Alice, "they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Wouldn't it be murder to leave it behind?" She said the last words out loud, and the little thing grunted in reply. It had left off sneezing by the time. "Don't grunt," said Alice. "That's not at all the proper way of expressing yourself." The baby grunted again, and Alice looked very anxiously into his face to see what was the matter with it. There could be no doubt that it had a very turned-up nose, much more like a snout than a real nose. Also, its eyes were getting extremely small for a baby. Altogether, Alice did not like the look of the thing at all, but perhaps it was only sobbing, she thought, and looked into its eyes again to see if there was any tears. Nope, there were no tears. "If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear," said Alice seriously, "I'll have nothing more to do with you. Mind now." The poor little thing sobbed again, or grunted, it was impossible to say which. And they went on for a while in silence. Alice was just beginning to think to herself, "Now what am I to do with this creature when I get home?" When it grunted again so violently that she looked down into its face in some alarm, This time there could be no mistake about it. It was neither more or less than a pig. I knew it. They were playing with words for a reason, and then we have a nice illustration of Alice holding a pig with a nice little hat. This is such a... Why does she look so chunky? She looks so white in this picture. She looks kind of funny. Let's see. Okay. At the next chapter. No, wait. Continue. And she felt that it would be quite absurd for her to carry it any further. So she set the little creature down and felt quite relieved to see it trot quietly away into the wood. If it had grown up, she said to herself, it would have made a dreadful ugly child, but it makes rather a handsome pig, I think. And she began thinking over other children she knew who might do very well as pigs, and was just saying to herself, if one only knew the right way to change them, when she was a little startled by seeing the Cheshire cat sitting on a bud of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it was Alice. It looked good-natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt that it ought to be treated with respect. Cheshire Puss, she began, rather timidly, as she did not at all know whether it liked the name. However, it only grinned a little wider. Come, it's pleased so far, thought Alice, and she went on. Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And then there's a nice illustration. My goodness, I don't remember the cat being this ugly. There's a really creepy cat with blank eyes looking straight into Alice down from the tree. That depends a good deal on where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, said the cat. So long as I get somewhere, Alice added as an explanation. Oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat. If you only walk long enough. Alice felt that this could not be denied, so tried another question. What sort of people live about here? In that direction, the cat said, waving its right paw around. Lives a hater. A hater? One of my haters, no. Lives a hatter. And in that direction, waving the other paw, lives a March hare. Visit either you like, they're both mad. But I don't want to go among mad people, Alice remarked. Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You are mad. How do you know I'm mad? Said Alice. You must be, said the cat, or you wouldn't have come here. Alice didn't think that proved at all. However, she went on. And how do you know that you're mad? To begin with, said the cat. A dog's not mad. You grant that? I suppose so, said Alice. Well then, the cat went on. You see, a dog growls when it's angry and wags its tail when it's pleased. Now I growl when I'm pleased and wag my tail when I'm angry. Therefore I'm mad. I call it purring, not growling, said Alice. Call it whatever you like, said the cat. Do you play croquet with the queen today? I should like it very much, said Alice, but I haven't been invited yet. You'll see me there, said the cat, and vanished. Alice was not much surprised at this. She was getting so used to the queer things happening. While she was looking at the place where it had been, it suddenly appeared again. By the by, what became of the baby? Said the cat. I'd nearly forgotten to ask. It turned into a pig, Alice quietly said, just as if it hadn't come back in a natural way. I thought it would, said the cat, and vanished again. Alice waited a little, half expecting to see it again, but it did not appear. And after a minute or two, she walked on in a direction in which the March hare was said to live. I've seen hatters before, she said to herself. The March hare will be much the most interesting, and perhaps, as this may, it won't be raving mad. At least not so mad as it was in March. As she said this, she looked up, and there was the cat again, sitting on a branch of a tree. Did you say pig or a fig? Said the cat. I said pig, replied Alice, and I wish you wouldn't kept appearing and vanishing so suddenly. You make one quite giddy. All right, said the cat, and this time it vanished quite slowly. beginning with the end of the tail and ending with the green, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone. Oh my goodness. And then we have the same illustration, very similar illustration, of the cat looking down from the tree, except this time his entire body is missing, and only his grin and face slightly. The face is slightly fading, but the grin is solid. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat, it's the most curious thing I've ever seen in my life. She had not gone much further before she came in sight of the house of the March Hare. She thought it must be the right house, because the chimney were shaped like ears and the roof was thatched with fur. It was so large a house that she did not like to go near till she had nibbled some more of the left-hand bit of mushrooms, and raised herself to about 2 feet high. Even then, she walked up towards it rather timidly, saying to herself, "Suppose it should be raving mad after all. I almost wish I'd gone to see the Hatter instead." Chapter 7. Let's go. Okay, let's take a little break here. I have my handy dandy cup with coffee in here, so I'll take a sip. In fact, I'm actually just finished it because it's getting cold. Let's see. There we go. Nice. I have water right here, just in case I need it. Just organizing my desk a little bit. Nice. Okay. Let's continue then. Chapter 7. A Mad Tea Party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A thermos was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice. Unless it's sleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, they cried out when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Have some wine, the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. I don't see any wine, she remarked. There isn't any, said the March Hare. Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it, said Alice angrily. It wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited, said the March Hare. Got him. Let's go. I didn't know it was your table, said Alice. It's late for a great many more than 3. Your hair wants cutting, said the Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. You should learn not to make personal remarks, Alice said with some severity. It's very rude. My goodness. The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he... Oh no, what happened to this? But all he said was, why is raving like a writing desk? Come, we shall have some fun now, thought Alice. I'm glad they've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that, she added aloud. I don't know what happened to this page, but I wonder if they're gonna patch this book. 1 out of 5 stars. Can't believe the book was scanned improperly. We have a nice illustration of the March Hare and the Mad Hatter, and Alice sitting. She looks very mad. Almost like she owns the place, my goodness. She looks like the mafia boss. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cups of tea. And a very nice large oh my goodness, I don't know the name of it actually. Let's move on. Do you mean that you think you can find out the answer to it? Said the March Hare. Exactly so, said Alice. Then you should say, what do you mean? The March Hare went on. I do, Alice hastily replied. At least, I mean that I say what I say. That's the same thing, you know. Not the same thing a bit, said the Hatter. Why, you might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see. You might just as well say, added the March Hare, that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like. You might just as well say, added the Dormouse, which seemed to be talking in his sleep, that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe. It is the same thing with you, said the Hatter. And here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute while Alice thought over all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't much. The Hatter was the first to break the silence. What day of the month is it? He said, turning to Alice. He had taken his watch out of his pocket and was looking at it uneasily, checking it every now and then and holding it to his ear. Alice considered a little and then said, The 4th. 2 days wrong, sighed the Hatter. I told you butter wouldn't suit the works, he added, looking angry at the March Hare. It was the best butter, the March Hare meekly replied. Meek? Yes, but some crumbs must have gotten as well, the Hatter grumbled. You shouldn't have put in with the bread knife. The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily. Then he dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again, but he could think of nothing better to say than his first remark. It was the best butter, you know. Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. What a funny watch, she remarked. It tells the day of the month, and doesn't tell what o'clock it is. Why should it? Muttered the Hatter. Does your watch tell you what year it is? Of course not, Alice replied very readily. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time together. Which is just the case with mine, said the Hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to have no meaning in it, and yet it was certainly English. I don't quite understand, she said as politely as she could. The Dormouse is asleep again, said the Hatter, and he poured a little hot tea upon its nose. The Dormouse shook its head impatiently and said, without opening its eyes, of course, just what I was going to remark myself. Have you guessed the riddle yet? The Hatter said, turning to Alice again. No, I gave it up, Alice replied. What's the answer? I haven't the slightest idea, said the Hatter. Nor I, said the Hare. Alice sighed wearily. I think you might do something better with the time, she said, then wasted asking riddles with no answers. If you knew time as well as I do, said the Hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him. I don't know what you mean, said Alice. Of course you don't, the Hatter said, tossing his head contemptuously. I dare say you never even spoke to time. Perhaps not, Alice occasionally replied, but I know I have beat time when I learn music. Ah, that accounts for it, said the Hatter. You won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you liked with the clock. For instance, suppose it were 9 o'clock in the morning, just time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock in a twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner. I only wish it was, the March Hare said to itself in a whisper. That will be grand, certainly, said Alice thoughtfully. But then, I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know. Not at first, perhaps, said the Hatter, but you could keep it to 1:30 as long as you liked. Is that the way you manage? Alice asked. The Hatter shook his head mournfully. Not I, he replied. We quarreled the last March, just before he went mad, you know. pointing with his teaspoon at the March Hare. It was at a great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing it. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you are at. You know the song, perhaps? And then... no way. Okay, so this is the Mad Hatter. We have a nice illustration of the Mad Hatter singing with his mouth fully open. And I'm guessing next to him is the dormouse sleeping next to him. This is such a nice illustration. I've heard something like that before. I've heard something like it, said Alice. It goes on, you know. The Hatter continued its way, in this way. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle. Here the dormouse shook itself and began singing it in sleep. Twinkle, 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 twinkle. And went on as long as they had to pinch it to make it stop. Well, I'd hardly finished the first verse, said the Hatter, when the Queen jumped up and bawled out, he's murdering that time. Up with his head. How dreadfully savage, exclaimed Alice. And ever since then, the Hatter went on in a mournful tone. He won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now. A bright idea came into Alice's head. Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here? She asked. Yes, that's it, said the Hatter with a sigh. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash the things with pin with wiles. Then you keep moving around, I suppose, said Alice. Exactly so, said the Hatter, as the things get used up. But what happens when you come out to the beginning again? Alice ventured to ask. Suppose we change the subject, the March Hare interrupted, yawning. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story. I'm afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at the proposal. Then the dormouse shall. They both cried, Wake up, dormouse, and they pinched it on both sides at once. The dormouse slowly opened his eyes. I wasn't asleep, he said in his hoarse, feeble voice. I heard every word you fellows said. Tell us a story, said the March Hare. Yes, please do, pleaded Alice. And be quick about it, added the Hatter, or you'll be asleep again before it's done. Once upon a time, there were 3 little sisters, the dormouse began in a great hurry, and their names were Elsie, Lassie, and Tilly. And they lived at the bottom of the well. What did they live on? Said Alice, who always took a great interest in questions of eating and drinking. They lived on treacle. What? Said the dormouse after thinking a minute or two. They couldn't have done that, you know, Alice gravely remarked. They had been ill. So they were, said the dormouse, very ill. Alice tried a little to fancy herself what such an extraordinary way of living would be like, but it puzzled her too much, so she went on. But why did they live at the bottom of the well? Take some more tea, the March Hare said to Alice very earnestly. I've had nothing yet, Alice replied in an offended tone, so I can't take more. You mean you can't take less, said the Hatter. It's very easy to take more than nothing. Nobody asked your opinion, and said Alice, oh my goodness. Said who? Who asked you? Just kidding. Who's making personal remarks now? The Hatter asked triumphantly. Alice did not quite know what to say to this, so she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter, and then turned to the dormouse and repeated her question. Why did they live at the bottom of the well? The dormouse again took a minute or two to think about it, and then said, It was a treacle well. There's no such thing. Alice was beginning to very angrily. But the Hatter and the March Hare went, Shush, shush. And the dormouse sulkily remarked, If you can't be civil, you'd better finish the story for yourself. No, please, go on, Alice said very humbly. I won't interrupt you again. I dare say there may be one. One, indeed, said the dormouse indignantly. However, he consented to go on, and so these 3 little sisters they were leaning to draw, you know. What did they draw? Said Alice, quite forgetting her promise. treacle, said the Dormouse without considering at all this time. I want a clean cup, interrupted the Hatter. Let's all move one place on. He moved on as he spoke, and the Dormouse followed him. The March Hare moved into the Dormouse's place, and Alice rather unwillingly took the place of the March Hare. The Hatter was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk jug into his plate. Alice did not wish to offend the Dormouse again, so she began very cautiously. But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from? You can draw water out of a water well, said the Hatter, so I shall think you could draw a treacle out of a treacle well. Eh? Stupid. My God. But they were in the well, Alice said, to the Dormouse not choosing to notice this last remark. Of course they were, said the Dormouse, well in. These answers so confused poor Alice that she let the Dormouse go on for some time without interrupting it. They were learning to draw. The Dormouse went on, yawning and rubbing its eyes, for it was getting very sleepy, and they drew all manner of things, everything that begins with an M. Why with an M? Said Alice. Why not? Said the March Hare. Alice was silent. The Dormouse had closed its eyes by this time, and was going off into those. But on being pinched by the Hatter, it woke up again with a little shriek, and went on. Shriek! That begins with an M, such a mouse traps, and the moon, and the memory, and mushness. You know, you say things are mush of mushness. Did you ever see such a thing as a train of mushness? Really now, you ask me, said Alice, very much confused. I don't think. Then you shouldn't talk, said the Hatter. My goodness. And then we have a nice illustration of the Mad Hatter and the Hare, the March Hare, putting the mouse door into the teapot. This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in a great disgust and walked off. The Dormouse fell asleep instantly, and neither of the others took at least notice of her going, though she looked back once or twice, half hoping they would call after her. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into a teapot. At any rate, I'll never go there again, said Alice as she picked her way through the woods. It's the stupidest tea party I ever was at in all my life. Just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it. That's very curious, she thought, but everything's curious today. I think I may as well go in at once. And she went in. Once more she found herself in the long hall, and close to the little glass table. Now I'll manage better this time, she said to herself, and began by taking the little golden key and unlocking the door that led into the garden. Then she set to work nibbling at the mushroom. She had kept a piece of it in her pocket till she was about a foot high. Then she walked down the little passage, and then she found herself at last in the beautiful garden, among the bright flower beds and the cool fountains. The Queen's Crooked Crown. Nice. So we're at chapter 8. Nice. Hi, Craft Girl. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. How you doing today? Today we're just finishing the book, Alice in Wonderland. Welcome, welcome. Nice. Okay. Let's quickly take a small break here. I'm gonna drink some water. I guess my avatar twists in pain when I drink water. Nice, okay. Without further ado, let's continue. Actually, let me clear my throat real quick. My goodness. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden. The roses growing on it were white but there were 3 gardeners at it, busily painting them red. Alice thought this was a very curious thing, and she went near to watch them. And just as she came up to them, she heard one of them say, "Look out now, Five. Don't go splashing paint over me like that." "I couldn't help it," said Five in a sulky tone. 7 jogged my elbow, on which 7 looked up and said, "That's right, Five. Always lay the blame on others." "You better not talk," said Five. "I heard the Queen say only yesterday you deserve to be beheaded." And then we have a nice illustration here of number 7, 5, and 2 under a tree. It's a tree of flowers, of roses none the least. And they have a brush. They all have little brushes. Are they trying to paint the roses? Huh, interesting. "What for?" said the one who had first spoken. "That's none of your business, too," said 7. "Yes, it is my business. Yes, it is his business," said 5, "and I'll tell him it was for bringing the cooked tulip roots instead of onions." 7 flung down his brush and had just begun, well, of all the unjust things, when his eyes chanced to fall upon Alice as she stood watching them, and he checked himself suddenly. The others looked round also, and all of them bowed low. "Would you tell me," said Alice, a little timidly, "why you are painting those roses?" 5 and 7 said nothing, but looked at 2. 2 began in a low voice. "Why, the fact is, you see, miss, this here ought to have been a red rose tree, and we put a white one in by mistake, and if the Queen was to find out, we shall all have our heads cut off, you know. So you see, miss, we're doing our best afore she comes." 2. At this moment 5, who had been anxiously looking across the garden, called out, "The Queen! The Queen!" And the 3 gardeners instantly threw themselves flat upon their faces. There was a sound of many footsteps, and Alice looked round, eager to see the Queen. First came 10 soldiers carrying clubs. These were all shaped like the 3 gardeners, oblong and flat, with their hands and feet at the corners. Next the 10 courtiers. These were ornaments all over with diamonds, and walked 2 and 2 as the soldiers did. After these came the royal children. There were 10 of them, and the little dears came jumping merrily along, hand in hand, in couples. They were all ornamented with hearts. Next came the guests, mostly kings and queens, and among them Alice recognized the white rabbit. It was talking in a hurried, nervous manner, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without noticing her. Then followed the knave of hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion. And at last of all the grand processions came the king of queen and queen of hearts. Alice was rather doubtful whether she ought not to lie down on her face like the 3 gardeners, but she could not remember ever having heard of such a rule at processions. And besides, what would be the use of processions, thought she, if people had all to lie down upon their faces so that they couldn't see it? So she stood still where she was and waited. When the processions came opposite to Alice, they all stopped and looked at her, and the Queen said severely, "Who is this?" she said to the knave of hearts, who only bowed and smiled in reply. "Idiot," said the Queen, tossing her head impatiently, and turning to Alice she went on, "What's your name, child?" "My name is Alice, so please your Majesty," said Alice very politely, but she added to herself, "Why, they are only a pack of cards after all. I needn't be afraid of them." And then here we have the Queen and King of Hearts. It's a nice illustration of the King and Queen of Hearts. The Queen is very upset, pointing at Alice, and Alice is very anxious, scratching herself in her arms. And then we have someone holding the crown in a velvet cushion. And who are these? Said the queen, pointing at 3 gardeners who were lying round the rose tree. For you see, as they were lying on their faces, and the patterns on their backs was the same as the rest of the pack, she could not tell whether they were gardeners or soldiers, or courtiers, or 3 of her own children. How shall I know? Said Alice, surprised at her own courage. It's no business of mine. The queen turned crimson with fury, and after glaring at her for a moment like a wild beast, screamed, "Off with her head! Off!" "Nonsense," said Alice, very loudly and decidedly, and the queen was silent. The king laid his hand upon her arm, and timidly said, "Consider, my dear, she is only a child." The queen turned angrily away from him, and said to the knave, "Turn them over." The knave did so, very carefully with one foot. "Get up," said the queen, in a shrill loud voice, and 3 gardeners instantly jumped up and began bowing to the king and the queen, the royal children, and everyone else. "Leave off that," screamed the queen. "You make me giddy." And then turning to the rose tree, she went on, "What have you been doing here?" "May it pleases your majesty," said 2 in a very humble tone, going down on one knee as he spoke. "We were trying." "I see," said the queen, who had meanwhile been examining the roses. "Off with their heads." And the processions moved on, 3 of the soldiers remaining behind to execute the unfortunate gardeners, who ran to Alice for protection. "You shan't be beheaded," said Alice, and she put them into a large flower pot that stood near. The 3 soldiers wandered about for a minute or 2 looking for them, and then quietly marched off after the others. "Are their heads off?" shouted the queen. "Their heads are gone, if it pleased your majesty," the soldiers shouted in reply. "That's right," shouted the queen. "Can you play cricket?" The soldiers were silent and looked at Alice, as the question was evidently meant for her. "Yes," shouted Alice. "Come on then," roared the queen, and Alice joined the procession, and wondering very much what would happen next. It's a very fine day," said the timid voice at her side. She was walking by the white rabbit, who was peeping anxiously into her face. "Very," said Alice. "Where's the Duchess?" "Hush, hush," said the rabbit in a lowered, hurried tone. He looked anxiously over his shoulder as he spoke, then raised himself upon tiptoe, put his mouth close to her ear, and whispered, "She's under sentence of execution." "What for?" said Alice. "Did you say what a pity?" the rabbit asked. "No, I didn't," said Alice. "I don't think it's at all a pity." Said, "What for?" "She boxed the queen's ears," the rabbit began. Alice gave a little scream of laughter. "Oh, hush," the rabbit whispered in a frightening tone. "The queen will hear you." You see, she came rather late, and the queen said, "Get to your places," shouted the queen in a voice of thunder. And people began running about in all directions, tumbling up against each other. However, they got to settle down in a minute or 2, and the game began. Alice thought she had never seen such a curious croquet round in all her life. It was all ridges and furrows. The balls were live hedgehogs, the mallets live flamingos, and soldiers had to double themselves up and to stand up on their hands and feet to make the arches. The chief difficulty Alice found at first was in managing her flamingo. She succeeded in getting its body tucked away comfortably enough under her arm, with its legs hanging down, but generally just as she had got its neck nicely straightened out and was going to give the hedgehog a blow with its head. And then we have a nice illustration of Alice holding the flamingo, and her foot was on one of the hedgehogs, rolled like a ball. It will twist itself round and look up in her face with such a puzzled expression that she could not help bursting out laughing, and when she had got its head down and was going to begin again, it was very provoking to find that the hedgehog had unrolled itself and was in the act of crawling away. Besides all this, there was generally a ridge of furrow in the way wherever she wanted to send the hedgehog to. And as the double-up soldiers were always... Oh, thank you for subscribing, Sophia. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying the stream. We're always getting up and walking off the other parts of the ground, Alice soon came to the conclusion that it was a very difficult game indeed. The players all played at once without waiting for turns, quarreling all the while, and fighting for the hedgehogs, and in a very short time the queen was very furious, passion, and went stamping about, and shouting, "Up with his head!" or "Up with her head!" about once in a minute. Alice began to feel very uneasy. To be sure, she had not as yet had any dispute with the queen, but she knew that it might happen any minute, and then thought she, "What will become of me? They are dreadfully fond of beheading people here. The great wonder is that there is any one left alive." She was looking about for some way of escape, and wondering whether she could get away without being seen, when she noticed a curious appearance in the air. It puzzled her very much at first, but after watching it a minute or two, she made it out to be a crane, and she said to herself, "It's the Cheshire cat. Now I shall have somebody to talk to." "How are you getting on?" said the cat, as soon as there was mouth enough for it to speak with. Alice waited till the eyes appeared, and then nodded. "It's no use speaking to it," she thought, till its ear had come, or at least one of them. In another minute the whole head appeared, and then Alice put down her flamingo, and began an account of the game, feeling very glad she had someone to listen to her. The cat seemed to think that there was enough of it now in sight, and no more of it appeared. "I don't think they play at all fairly," Alice began in rather complaining tone. "And they all quarrel so dreadfully, one can hear oneself speak. And they don't seem to have any rules in particular. At least, if there are, nobody attends to them. And you've no idea how confusing it is, all the things being alive. For instance, there's the ark I've got to go through next, walking about the other end of the ground. And I should have Crockett, the queen's hedgehog, just now, only it ran away when it saw mine coming." "How do you like the queen?" said the cat in a low voice. "Not at all," said Alice. "She's so extremely," just when she noticed that the queen was close behind her listening. So she went on, "likely to win. That it's hardly worth while finishing the game." The queen smiled and passed on. "Who are you talking to?" said the king, coming up to Alice and looking at the cat's head with a great curiosity. "It's a friend of mine, a Cheshire cat," said Alice. "Allow me to introduce it." "I don't like the look of it at all," said the king. "However, it may kiss my hand if it likes." "I'd rather not," the cat remarked. Don't be impertinent," said the king, "and don't look at me like that." He got behind Alice as he spoke. "A cat may look at the king," said Alice. "I've read that in some book, but I don't remember where. Well, it must be removed," said the king very decidedly, and he called to the queen, who was passing at the moment. "My dear, I wish we'll have this cat removed." The queen had only one way of settling all difficulties great or small. "Up with his head," she said, without even looking round. "I'll fetch the executioner myself," said the king eagerly, and he hurried off. Alice thought she might as well go back and see how the game was going on, as she heard of the queen's voice in the distance, screaming with passion. She had already heard her sentence 3 of the players to be executed for having missed their turns, and she did not like the look of the things at all, as the game was in such confusion that she never knew whether it was her turn or not. So she went in search of her hedgehog. The hedgehog was engaged in a fight with another hedgehog, which seemed to Alice an excellent opportunity for crocketing. One of them with the other. The only difficulty was that her flamingo was gone across to the other side of the garden, where Alice could see it trying in a helpless sort of way to fly up into one of the trees. By the time she had caught the flamingo and brought it back, the fight was over, and both the hedgehogs were out of sight. But it doesn't matter much, thought Alice, as all the arches are gone from this side of the ground. So she tucked it under her arm, that it might not escape again, and went back. And then we have a nice illustration of the Cheshire Cat, looking down on everyone as a floating head. We have the king, the queen, the executor, and I'm guessing the royal children in the back. For a little more conversation with her friend. When she got back to the Cheshire Cat, she was surprised to find quite a large crowd collected around it. There was a dispute going on between the executioners, the king, and the queen, who were all talking at once, while all the rest were quite silent and looked very uncomfortable. The moment Alice appeared, she was appealed to by all three to settle the question, and they repeated their arguments to her, though, as they all spoke at once, she found it very hard indeed to make out exactly what they said. The executioner's argument was that you couldn't cut off a head unless there was a body to cut it off from. But he had never had to do such thing before, and he wasn't going to begin at his time of life. The king's argument was that anything that had a head could be beheaded, and that you weren't to talk nonsense. The queen's argument was that if something wasn't done about it in less than no time, she had everybody executed all around. It was this last remark that had made the whole party look so grave and anxious. Alice could think of nothing else to say, but it belongs to the Duchess. You better ask her about it. She's in prison, the queen said to the executioner. Fetch her here. And the executioner went off like an arrow. The cat's head began fading away the moment he was gone, and by the time he had come back with the Duchess, it had entirely disappeared. So the king and the executioner ran wildly up and down looking for it, while the rest of the party went back to the game. Chapter 9. Welcome, Tig. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're enjoying it. We're reading the rest of the book for Alice in Wonderland. It's been a very nice book so far. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me just take a quick sip of water. Evening chilling, let's go. I wish it was raining here. I guess it is raining in my ears. It was a very cold morning this morning. I had a bit of a struggle there waking up. But no matter, it's all good. Let's see. But yes, today we're going to be finishing the book. So we're kind of going through all the chapters. We have about 4 chapters left, I believe. No, wait. Well, yes, 4 counting this one as well. Nice. So let's continue. We're in an hour now, so hopefully we'll finish in less than 2 hours. Chapter 9. The Mock Turtle Story. You can't think how glad I am to see you again, you dear old thing, said the Duchess as she tucked her arm affectionately into Alice's, and they walked off together. Alice was very glad to find her in such a pleasant temper, and thought to herself that perhaps it was only the pepper that had made her so savage when they met in the kitchen. When I'm a Duchess, she said to herself, not in a very hopeful tone though, I won't have any pepper in my kitchen at all. Soup does very well without. Maybe it's always pepper that makes people hot-tempered, she went on, very much pleased at having found out a new kind of rule, and vinegar that makes them sour, and chamomile that makes them bitter, and barley sugar and such things that make children sweet-tempered. I only wish people knew that, then they wouldn't be so stingy about it, you know. She had quite forgotten the Duchess by this time, and was a little startled when she heard her voice close to her ear. "You're thinking about something, my dear, and that makes you forget to talk. I can't tell you just now what the moral of that is, but I shall remember it in a bit." Perhaps it hasn't one," Alice ventured to remark. "Tut tut, child," said the Duchess. "Everything's got the moral, if only you can't find it." And she squeezed herself up closer to Alice's side as she spoke. Alice did not much like her keeping so close to her, first because the Duchess was very ugly, and secondly because she was exactly the right height to rest her chin on Alice's shoulder, and it was an uncomfortably sharp chin. Oh my god. Yeah, I would. Here we have an illustration of the Duchess and Alice holding the flamingo. She's very ugly indeed. She wasn't so ugly before. What happened to her? What is on her head too? Very weird thing looking. It's like she's holding something, I don't know. My goodness. That is unsettling for sure. She did not like to be rude, so she bore it as well as she could. "The game's going on rather better now," she said, by way of keeping up the conversation a little. "'Tis so," said the Duchess, "and the moral of that is, oh, it's love, this love, that makes the world go round." Somebody said, Alice whispered, that it's done by everybody minding their own business. "Ah, well, it means much the same thing," said the Duchess, digging her sharp little chin into Alice's shoulder as she added, "And the moral of that is, take care of the sons, and the sons will take care of themselves." How fond she is of finding morals in things, Alice thought to herself. "I dare say you're wondering why I don't put my arm around your waist," the Duchess said after a pause. "The reason is that I'm doubtful about the temper of your flamingo. Shall I try the experiment?" "He might bite," said Alice casually replied, not feeling at all anxious to have the experiment tried. "Very true," said the Duchess. "Flamingos and mustards both bite. And the moral of that is, birds of a feather flock together." "Only mustard isn't a bird," Alice remarked. "Right, as usual," said the Duchess. "What a clear way you have of putting things." "It's a mineral, I think," said Alice. "Of course it is," said the Duchess, who seemed ready to agree to everything that Alice said. "There's a large mustard mine near here. And the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours." "Oh, I know," exclaimed Alice, who had not attended to this last remark. "It's the vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is." "I quite agree with you," said the Duchess. "And the moral of that is, be what you will seem to be, or if you'd like it, put it more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others, that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you had been would have appeared to them to be otherwise." Wow, that was a mouthful. "I think I should understand that better," Alice said very politely. "If I had it written down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it. That's nothing to what I could say if I choose," the Duchess replied in a pleased tone. "Pray, don't trouble yourself to say it any longer than that," said Alice. "Oh, don't talk about trouble," said the Duchess. "I make you a present of everything I've said as yet." My goodness, this whole conversation. "A cheap sort of present," thought Alice. "I'm glad they don't give birthdays presents like that." But she did not venture to say it out loud. "Thinking again?" the Duchess asked with another dig of her sharp little chin. I've got a right to think," said Alice sharply, for she was beginning to feel a little worried. "Just about as much right," said the Duchess, "as pigs have to fly. And But here, to Alice's great surprise, the Duchess' voice died away, even in the middle of her favorite word, moral, and the arm that was linked into hers began to tremble. Alice looked up, and there stood the Queen in front of them, with her arms folded, frowning like a thunderstorm. "A fine day, Your Majesty," the Duchess began in a low but weak voice. Now I give you fair warning, shouted the queen, stamping on the ground as she spoke. Either you or your head must be off, and that in about half no time. Take your choice. The Duchess took her choice, and it was gone in a minute. Let's go on with the game, the queen said to Alice, and Alice was too much frightened to say a word, but slowly followed her back to the croquet ground. The other guests had taken advantage of the queen's absence, and were resting in the shade. However, the moment they saw her, they hurried back into the game. The queen merely remarking that a moment's delay would cost them their lives. All the time they were playing, the queen never left off quarreling with the other players and shouting, "Off with his head! Up with her head!" Those whom she sentenced were taken into custody by the soldiers, who of course had to leave off being archers to do this, so that by the end of the half an hour or so there were no archers left, and all of the players except the king, the queen, and Alice were in custody and under sentence of execution. Then the queen left off quite out of breath and said to Alice, "Have you seen the mock turtle yet?" "No," said Alice. "I don't even know what a mock turtle is." "Is the thing mock turtle soup is made from?" said Alice. Said the queen. "I never saw one or heard of one," said Alice. "Come on then," said the queen, "and he shall tell you his story." As they walked off together, Alice heard the king say in a low voice, and then we have what seems to be like a half gargoyle, half lion, the bottom of the lion and the top of a falcon or something like that. "Company generally, you're all pardoned." "Come, that's a good thing," she said to herself, for she had felt quite unhappy at the number of executions the queen had ordered. They very soon came upon a griffon. Yeah, there you go. A griffon, lying fast asleep in the sun. If you don't know what a griffon is, look at the picture. What the heck? Was that... Did we just break the fourth wall? Was that Alice telling us, or the writer to look at the picture? He must have been very proud of that illustration. "Up, lazy thing," said the queen, "and take this young lady to see the mock turtle, and to hear his history. I must go back and see after some executions I have ordered." And she walked off, leaving Alice alone with the griffon. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but on the whole she thought it would be quite as safe to stay with as long as to go after the savage queen, so she waited. The griffon sat up and rubbed its eyes. Then it watched the queen till she was out of sight. Then it chuckled. "What fun," said the griffon, half to itself, half to Alice. "What is the fun?" said Alice. "Why, she," said the griffon. Is it griffon or griffon? I'm starting to question that. "It's all her fancy that they never execute nobody, you know. Come on." "Everybody says come on here," thought Alice, as she went too slowly after it. "I never was ordered about in all my life, never." They had not gone far before they saw the mock turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of a rock. And, as they came nearer, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break. She pitied him deeply. "What is his sorrow?" she asked the griffon. This is gonna be a common word, isn't it? Let me Google it real quick. I don't want to mispronounce it so much. It's Griffin, okay. Like Gryffindor, I guess. Griffin. And the griffin answered, very nearly in the same words as before. "It's all his fancy, Dad. He hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Come on." So they went up to the mock turtle, who looked at them with large eyes, full of tears, but said nothing. This here young lady, said the Griffin, she wants for to know your history, she do. I'll tell it to her, said the Mock Turtle, in a deep hollow tone. Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished. So they sat down, and nobody spoke for some minutes. Alice thought to herself, I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin. My goodness. But she waited patiently. Once, said the Mock Turtle at last with a deep sigh, I was a real turtle. My goodness. What is this illustration? The Mock Turtle. They're so ugly. We have the Griffin looking like he's crying or something, but has his legs crossed. He's terrified of the Mock Turtle or something. I don't know. Alice is just as terrified, it seems. And the Mock Turtle is a combination of multiple beasts. He has the face of a calf, and he's crying. Has the body of a turtle, and arms of a falcon, and then legs of a pig. And if I'm not mistaken, that looks like the tail of a cow. What a horrible beast. These words were followed by a very long silence, broken only by an occasional exclamation of "Yerk!" What is that? Yerk! Yerk! From the Griffin, and the constant heavy sobbing of the Mock Turtle. Turtle. The Mock Turtle. Alice was very nearly getting up and saying, "Thank you, sir, for your interesting story." But she could not help thinking there must be more to come. So she sat still and said nothing. When we were little, the Mock Turtle went on at last, more calmly, though still sobbing a little now. And then we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise. Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one? Alice asked. We called him Tortoise because he taught us, said the Mock Turtle angrily. Really, you're a very dull. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question, added the Griffin. And then they both sat silent and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last the Griffin said to the Mock Turtle, Drive on, old fellow. Don't be all day about it. And he went on in these words. Yes, we went to school in the sea, that you might haven't believe it. You mayn't believe it. I never said I didn't, interrupted Alice. You did, said the Mock Turtle. Hold your tongue, added the Griffin, before Alice could speak again. The Mock Turtle went on. We had the best of educations. In fact, we went to school every day. I've been to day school too, said Alice. You needn't be so proud as all that. With extras? asked the Mock Turtles a little anxiously. Yes, said Alice. We learned French and music. And washing? Said the Mock Turtle. Certainly not, said Alice indignantly. Ah, then yours wasn't a really good school, said the Mock Turtle in a tone of great relief. Now at ours they had at the end of the bill French, music, and washing extra. You couldn't have wanted it much, said Alice, living in the bottom of the sea. I couldn't afford to learn it, said the Mock Turtle with a sigh. I only took the regular course. What was that? Inquired Alice, reeling and gritting and gritting. Gritting? My goodness. Of course, to begin with, the Mock Turtle replied, and then the different branches of arithmetic, ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision. I never heard of uglification, Alice ventured to say. What is it? The Griffin lifted both its paws in surprise. Never heard of amplification? Uglifying? It exclaimed. You know what to beautify is, I suppose? Yes, said Alice doubtfully. It means to make anything prettier. Well then, the Griffin went on, if you don't know what to uglify is, you're a simpleton. Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more questions about it. So she turned to the Mock Turtle and said, what else had you to learn? Well, there was a mystery. The Mock Turtle replied, counting off the subjects on his flappers, mystery ancient and modern, with a geography. Then drawing. The drawing master was an old congeries that used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils. What was that like? Said Alice. Well, I can't show it to you myself, the Mock Turtle said. I'm too stiff, and the Griffin never learnt it. Hadn't time, said the Griffin. I went to the classical master, though. He was an old crab, he was. I never went to him, the Mock Turtle said with a sigh. He thought laughing like grief. They used to say, so he did, said the Griffin, sighing in his turn, and both creatures hid their faces in their paws. And how many hours a day did you do lessons? Said Alice, in a hurry to change the subject. 10 hours the first day, said the Mock Turtle. 9 the next, and so on. What a curious plan, exclaimed Alice. That's the reason they're called lessons, the Griffin remarked. Because they're a lesson from the day to day. This was quite a new idea to Alice, and she thought it over a little before she made her next remark. Then the 11th day must have been a holiday. Of course it was, said the Mock Turtle. And how did you manage on the 12th? Alice went on eagerly. That's enough about lessons, the Griffin interrupted in a very decided tone. Tell her something about the games now. Chapter 10. Nice. Taking a small break here. I hope you guys are doing very well this Thursday. It's very fun to read to you guys, although I know it's not the most exciting streams. Maybe one day we can request... Thank you, nerd. Welcome to the stream. I'm glad that you're here. Maybe someday we'll go back to reading. I don't think that the reading streams do very well, so maybe someday we'll go back to reading. Maybe I'll ask for a book from you guys. Maybe something more exciting from than Alice in Wonderland. Right now that we're not monetized, we can probably get away with reading a copyrighted book. We'll be breaking the rules a little bit, but no matter. It could be interesting to read something nicer. Or maybe we can ask an author to let us read their book on stream. They're usually really nice about it. So, at least not a very popular author, I suppose. Okay, let's continue. Let's try to finish this book. We're in chapter 10, The Lobster's Quadrille. Excuse me. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and drew the back of one flapper across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two, sobs choked his voice. Same as if he had a bun in his throat, said the Griffin, and it set to work shaking him and punching him in the back. At last the Mock Turtle recovered his voice, and with tears running down his cheeks, went on again. You may not have lived much under the sea. I haven't, said Alice. And perhaps you've never been introduced to a lobster. Alice began to say, I once tasted... Oh my goodness, Alice. But checked herself hastily and said, no, never. So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is. No, indeed, said Alice. What sort of dance it is it? Why, said the Gryphon, you first form into line along the seashore. 2 lines, cried the Mock Turtle. Seals, turtles, and so on. Then when you've cleared the jellyfish out of the way... That generally takes some time, interrupted the Gryphon. You advance twice. Each with a lobster as a partner, cried the Gryphon. Of course, the Mock Turtle said. Advance twice, said the partners. Change lobsters and retire in the same order, continued the Gryphon. Then you know, the Mock Turtle went on, you throw the lobsters, shouted the Gryphon, with a bound into the air. As far out to the sea as you can. Swim after them, screamed the Gryphon. Turn a somersault in the sea, cried the Mock Turtle, capering wildly about. Change lobsters again, yelled the Gryphon. Back to land again, and that's all the first figure, said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping his voice, and the 2 creatures who had been jumping about like mad things all this time sat down again very sadly and quietly and looked at Alice. It must be a very pretty dance, said Alice timidly. Would you like to see the little of it, said the Mock Turtle. Very much indeed, said Alice. Come, let's try the first figure, said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon. We can do it without lobsters, you know. Which shall sing? Oh, you sing, said the Gryphon. I've forgotten the words. So they began solemnly dancing around and around Alice every now and then. And here we have a nice illustration. The turtle still sobbing. And Alice is just frightened the entire time. The Gryphon still making the same face. A very serious face. I just realized both creatures are a mix of other animals. Treading on her toes when they passed too close and waving her forepaws to mark the time, while the Mock Turtle sang this very slowly and sadly. Will you walk a little faster, said the Wiren to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you? Won't you? Will you? Won't you? Will you join the dance? Will you? Won't you? Will you? Won't you? Won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be. Will you take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea? But the snail replied, too far, and gave it a look askance. Said he thanked the Wiren kindly, but he will not join the dance. Will not, could not, will not, could not, will not join the dance. Will not, could not, will not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go? His scaly friend replied. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you join the dance? Thank you. It's a very interesting dance to watch, said Alice, feeling very glad that it was over at last. And I do so like the curious song about the wedding. Oh, as to the wedding, said the Mock Turtle. You've seen them, of course. Yes, said Alice. I've often seen them at then. She checked herself hastily. I don't know where then, maybe, said the Mock Turtle. But if you've seen them so often, of course you know what they're like. I believe so, Alice replied thoughtfully. They have their tails in their mouth, and they're all over crumbs. Oh my God, Alice. You're wrong about the crumbs, said the mock turtle. Crumbs will all wash off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths. And the reason is, here the mock turtle yawned and shut his eyes. Tell her about the reason and all that, he said to the griffin. The reason is, said the griffin, that they will go with the lobsters to the dance. So they got thrown out to sea, so they had to fall a long way. So they got their tails fast in their mouths, so they couldn't get them out again. That's all. Thank you, said Alice. It's very interesting. I never knew so much about the Whiting people. I can tell you more than that if you'd like, said the griffin. Do you know why it's called the... Oh my goodness, I don't know how to pronounce this word either, unfortunately. Let me look it up real quick. Whiting. It's whiting. Okay. I kind of figured because white... It's very close to being the whole word of white, but... Whiting. Okay. It's called a whiting. I never thought about it, said Alice. Why? It does the boots and shoes, the griffin replied very solemnly. Alice was truly puzzled. Does the boots and shoes? She repeated in a wondering tone. Why? Why are your shoes done with? Said the griffin. I mean, what makes them so shiny? Alice looked down at them and considered a little before she gave her answer. They are done with blacking, I believe. Boots and shoes under the sea, the griffin went on in a deep voice, are done with whiting. Now you know. And what are they made of? Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity. Soles and eels, of course. And the griffin replied rather impatiently, any shrimp could have told you that. If I'd been the whiting, said Alice, whose thoughts were still running on the song, I'd have said to the porpoise, keep back, please, we don't want you with us. They were obliged to have him with them. The mock turtle said, no wise fish will go anywhere without the porpoise. Wouldn't it really? Said Alice in a tone of great surprise. Of course not, said the mock turtle. Why, if a fish came to me and told me he was going on a journey, I shall say with a porpoise. Let me look that word as well. My goodness. My poor... Purpose. Purpose. What? Don't you mean purpose? Porpoise. It's pronounced the same way as purpose. 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 Don't you mean purpose? Said Alice. I mean what I say, the mock turtle replied in an offended tone. And the griffin added, come, let's hear some of your adventures. I could tell you my adventures beginning from this morning, said Alice, a little timidly. But it is no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then. Explain all that, said the mock turtle. No, the adventures first, said the griffin in an impatient tone. Explanations take such a dreadful time. So Alice began telling them her adventures from the time when she first saw the white rabbit. She was a little nervous about it just at first. The two creatures got so close to her, one on each side, and opened their eyes and mouths so very wide, but she gained courage as she went on. Her listeners were perfectly quiet still, till she got to the part about her repeating, "You're old, Father William," to the caterpillar, and the words all coming different, and then the mock turtle drew a long breath and said, "That's very curious." "It's all about the curious as it can be," said the griffin. "It all came different," the mock turtle repeated truthfully. "I shall like to hear the repeated something now. Tell her to begin." He looked at the griffin as if he thought it had some kind of authority over Alice. "Stand up and repeat. 'Tis the voice of the sluggard," said the griffin. How the creatures order one about and make one repeat lessons, thought Alice. I might as well be at school at once. However, she got up, and she began to repeat it, but her head was so full of the lobster's quadrille that she hardly knew what she was saying, and the words came very queer indeed. "'Tis the voice of the lobster," I heard him declare. You have baked me too brown. I must sugar my hair. As a dog with its eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons and turns out his toes. When the sands are all dry, he is as gay as a lark, and will talk in the contemptuous tones of the shark. But when the tide rises and sharks are around, his voice has a timid and tremulous sound. That's different from what I used to say when I was a child, said the Griffin. Well, I never heard it before, said the Mock Turtle, but it sounds uncommon nonsense. And here we have an illustration of a very tall lobster. He's brushing his hair next to a mirror. Very nice. If it wasn't for the bottom part, he's wearing shoes, and it looks very weird. Alice said nothing. She had sat down with her face in her hands, wondering if anything will ever happen in a natural way again. I should like to have it explained, said the Mock Turtle. She can't explain it, hastily said the Griffin. Go on with the next verse. But about his toes, the Mock Turtle persisted. How could he turn them out with his nose, you know? It's the first position in dancing, Alice said, but was dreadfully puzzled by the whole thing and longed to change the subject. Go on with the next verse, the Griffin repeated. It begins, I passed by his garden. Alice did not dare to disobey, though she felt sure it would all come wrong, and she went on in a trembling voice. I passed by his garden and marked with one eye how the owl and the panther were sharing a pie. The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl had dish as its share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a bone, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon, while the panther received a knife and a fork with a crow, and concluded the banquet by... What is the use of repeating all this stuff? The Mock Turtle interrupted. If you don't explain it as you go on. It's by far the most confusing thing I ever heard. Yes, I think you'd better leave off, said the Griffin, and Alice was only too glad to do so. Shall we try another figure of the lobster quadrille? The Griffin went on. Or would you like the Mock Turtle to sing you another song? Oh, a song, please, if the Mock Turtle will be so kind, Alice replied, so eagerly that the Griffin said, in a rather offended tone, no accounting for tastes. Sing her turtle soup, will you, old fellow? The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and began, in a voice choked with sobs, to sing this. Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties will not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening. Beautiful soup, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who will not give all else for two? Pennyworth, only a beautiful soup. Pennyworth, only of a beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening. Beautiful full soup. Curse again, cried the Griffin, and the Mock Turtle had just begun to repeat it when a cry of the trial's beginning was heard in the distance. Come on, cried the Griffin, and taking Alice by the hand, it hurried off without waiting for the end of the song. What trial is it? Alice panted as she ran, but the Griffin only answered, Come on, and ran faster, while more and more faintly came, carrying on the breeze that followed them, the melancholy words. Soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup. Hehehe. Nice. Chapter 11. How are you guys liking it so far? Did you like my singing? It's very hard to know how the singing goes in the books. I wonder if anyone has ever recreated the song. or if they asked the author at all how the song was, or how the song is supposed to be sang. It'd be very interesting to find out, in my opinion. Nice. Let me just take a quick sip of water. Oh, what the heck? What the heck was that? How did I emote? Somehow I emoted. How did I do that? Interesting. I didn't know. I was just drinking water. No matter. I'll figure something. I'll figure it later. Okay. Nice. Let's continue with chapter 11. Who stole the tarts? The king and queen of hearts were seated at the throne. When they arrived, with a great crowd assembled about them, all sorts of little birds and beasts, as well as the whole pack of carts, the knave was standing before them in chains with a soldier on each side to guard him, and near the king was the white rabbit, with a trumpet in one hand and a scroll of parchment in the other. In the very middle of the court was a table, with a large dish of tarts upon it. They looked so good that it made Alice quite hungry. To look at them, I wished they'd get the trial done, she thought, and hand round the refreshments. But there seemed to be no chance of this, so she began looking about her to pass away the time. Alice had never been in a court of justice before, but she had read about them in books, and she was quite pleased to find that she knew the name of nearly everything there. That's the judge, she said to herself, because his great wig. The judge, by the way, was the king, and as he wore his crown over the wig, look at the frontispiece if you want to see how it did. He did it. The frontispiece. Let's take a quick look. Where is the front piece? Here we are. Nice. So the wig, the crown is on top of the wig. He's wearing a crown just like me, except he has a heart instead of a star. Very cool. Secret lore? Secret fuku lore? Just kidding. He did not like it at all comfortable, and it was certainly not becoming. And that's the jury box, thought Alice. And those 12 creatures, she was obliged to say creatures, you see, because some of them were animals and some were birds. Wait a second, but animals are birds. Birds are animals. I suppose they're all jurors. She said this last word 2 or 3 times over to herself, being rather proud of it, for she thought, and rightly too, that very few little girls of her age knew the meaning of it all. However, jurymen would have done just as well. The 12 jurors were all writing very busily on slates. What are they all doing? Alice whispered to the griffin. They can't have anything to put down yet before the trials begun. They're putting down their names, the griffin whispered in reply, for fear they shall forget them before the end of the trial. Stupid things, Alice began in a loud, indignant voice, but she stopped hastily, for the white rabbit cried out, "Silence in the court," and the king put on his spectacles and looked anxiously round to see who was talking. Alice could see, as well as if she were looking over their shoulders, that all the jurors were writing down stupid things. on their slates, and she could even make out that one of them didn't know how to spell stupid, and that he had to ask his neighbor to tell him. A nice muddle their slates will be in before the trial's over, thought Alice. One of the jurors had a pencil that squeaked. This, of course, Alice could not stand, and she went round the court and got behind him, and very soon found, and then we have a nice illustration of a rabbit. He's wearing the hearts all over. This is a very cute outfit, actually. It has a bow on the shoulder. That's very cute, actually. I'm gonna screenshot this. This is giving me some ideas. Actually, let me just zoom out real quick, just to look at the entire illustration. Very cute outfit. Very, very cute. I was not expecting to see something adorable in here. For once, I guess. Very cool. An opportunity of taking it away. She did so quickly that the poor little juror, it was Bill the lizard, could not make out at all what had become of it. So after hunting all about for it, he was obliged to write with one finger for the rest of the day, and this was very little use, as he left no mark on the slate. Harold read the accusation, said the king. On this the White Rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet, and then unrolled the parchment scroll, and read as follows. The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts, all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts, and took them quite away. Consider your verdict, the king said to the jury. Not yet, not yet, the rabbit hastily interrupted. There's a great deal to come before that. Call the first witness, said the king. And the White Rabbit blew 3 blasts on the trumpet, and called out the first witness. The first witness was the Hatter. He came in with a teacup in one hand, and a piece of bread and butter in another. I beg your pardon, your majesty. He began for bringing this in, but I hadn't quite finished my tea when I was sent for. You ought to have finished, said the king. When did you begin? The Hatter looked at the March Hare, who had followed him into the court arm in arm. With the Dormouse for 10th of March, I think it was, he said 15, said the March Hare. 16, said the Dormouse. Writing that down, the king said to the jury, and the jury eagerly wrote down all 3 dates on their slates, and then added them up and reduced the answer to shillings and pence. Take off your hat, the king said to the Hatter. It isn't mine, said the Hatter. Stolen, the king exclaimed, turning to the jury, who instantly made a memorandum of the fact. I keep them to sell, the Hatter added. As an explanation, I've none of my own, I'm a Hatter. Here the queen put on her spectacles and began staring hard at the Hatter, who turned pale and fidgeted. Give your evidence, said the king, and don't be nervous or I'll have you executed on the spot. That's a bit of an oxymoron, I suppose you can. This did not seem to encourage the witness at all. He kept shifting from one foot to the other, looking uneasily at the queen. In his confusion he bit a large piece out of his teacup instead of the bread and butter. Just at this moment Alice felt a very curious sensation, which puzzled her a good deal until she made out what it was. She was beginning to grow larger again, and she thought at first she would get up and leave the court. But on second thought she decided to remain where she was, as long as there was room for her. I wish you wouldn't squeeze so, said the Dormouse, who was sitting next to her. I can hardly breathe. I can't help it, said Alice very meekly. I'm growing. You've no right to grow here, said the Dormouse. And here we have the Mad Hatter either taking his shoes, taking them out, or putting them on. Can't really tell. Eating some sort of bread or cheese. And drinking some tea. Very nice. Very nice tea. In this style, 10 out of 6. Or is it 6 out of 10? I guess it's 10 out of 6 because that's impossible. That will be a hole and a half. Okay. Don't talk nonsense, said Alice more boldly. You know you're growing too. Yes, but I grow at a reasonable pace, said the Dormouse. Not in that ridiculous fashion. And he got up very sulkily and crossed over the other side of the court. All this time the Queen had never left off staring at the Hatter, and just as the Dormouse crossed the court, she said to one of the officers of the court, "Bring me the list of the singers in the last concert," in which the wretched Hatter trembled so that he shook off both his shoes. "Give your evidence," the King repeated angrily, "or I'll have you executed, whether you're nervous or not." "I'm a poor man, your Majesty," the Hatter began in a trembling voice, "and I hadn't begun my tea. Not above a week or so. And what with the bread and butter getting so thin, and the twinkling of the tea." "A twinkling of what?" said the King. "It began with a T," the Hatter replied. "Of course twinkling begins with a T," said the King sharply. "Do you take me for a dunce? Go on." "I'm a poor man," the Hatter went on, "and most things twinkle after that," only the Marsh Hatter said. "I didn't," the Marsh Hare interrupted in a great hurry. "You did," said the Hatter. "I deny it," said the Marsh Hare. "He denies it," said the King. "Leave out that part." "Well, at any rate," the Dormouse said. The Hatter went on looking anxiously around to see if he would deny it too, but the Dormouse denied nothing, being fast asleep. "After that," continued the Hatter, "I cut some more bread and butter." "But what did the Dormouse say?" one of the jury asked. "That I can't remember," said the Hatter. "You must remember," remarked the King, "or I'll leave you executed." The miserable Hatter dropped his teacup and bread and butter, and went down on one knee. "I'm a poor man, your Majesty," he began. "You're a very poor speaker," said the King. Here one of the guinea pigs cheered, and was immediately surprised by the officer of the court. "As that is rather a hard word, I will just explain it to you how it was done." They had a large canvas bag, which tied up to the mouth with strings. Into this they slipped the guinea pig head first, and then sat upon it. "I'm glad I've seen that done," thought Alice. "I've so often read it in the newspapers." At the end of the trials, there was some attempt at applause, which was immediately suppressed by the officers of the court, and I never understood what it meant till now. "If that's all you know about it, you may stand down," continued the King. "I can't go no lower," said the Hatter. "I'm on the floor as it is." "Then you may sit down," the King replied. Here the other guinea pig cheered and was suppressed. And here we have the Mad Hatter, with his cup and bread. He's running without shoes, so I guess he was taking them off. And why is his cup broken? He's missing a whole piece. It's the perfect size of his mouth, as you can see from the toast. Interesting. "Come, that finishes the guinea pigs," thought Alice. "Now we shall get on the butter better." "I'd rather finish my tea," said the Hatter, with an anxious look at the Queen, who was reading the list of singers. "You may go," said the King, and the Hatter hurriedly left the court, without even waiting to put his shoes on. "And just take his head off outside," the Queen added to one of the officers, but the Hatter was out of sight before the officer could get to the door. "Call the next witness," said the King. The next witness was the Duchess' cook. She carried a pepper box in her hand, and Alice guessed who it was, even before she got into the court, by the way that the people near the door began sneezing all at once. "Give your evidence," said the King. "Shan't," said the cook. The King looked anxiously at the White Rabbit, who said in a low voice, "Your Majesty must cross-examine this witness." "Well, if I must, I must," the King said with a melancholy air, and after folding his arms and frowning at the cook till his eyes were nearly out of sight, he said in a deep voice, "What are tarts made of?" "Pepper, mostly," said the cook. Trickle, said sleepy voice behind her. Color of the Dormouse, the queen shrieked out. Behead the Dormouse. Turn the Dormouse out of court, suppress him, pinch him off with his whiskers. For some minutes the whole court was in confusion, getting the Dormouse turned out, and, by the time they had settled down again, the cook had disappeared. Never mind, said the king, with an air of great relief. Call the next witness. And he added in an undertone to the queen, Really, my dear, you must cross-examine the next witness. It quite makes for my forehead ache. Alice watched the White Rabbit as he fumbled over to the list, feeling very curious to see what the next witness would be like. For they haven't got much evidence yet, said to herself. Imagine her surprise when the White Rabbit read out, at the top of the shrill little voice, the name Alice. Chapter 12, and I believe this is the last chapter. Let's take a small break here. Very interesting book. The original story is definitely different from, movies and everything all the media that's been done in the modern world. I really like these stories though. Reading all stories like this. They kind of fit what I was trying to go for. Kind of learn a lot of new words. So that's very interesting, and I like it a lot. I will really like to continue read more books like this. Honestly, even if they do poorly, I think I would like to read them just for myself on stream. I don't know. I suppose we'll see. Because I really do truly enjoy it. It really, really, really warms my heart. But here we go. Chapter 12. Alice's Evidence. Oh my goodness. Wait, hold on. We didn't drink water. Nice. Let's begin. Chapter 12. Alice's Evidence. Here, cried Alice, quite forgetting in the flurry of the moment how large she had grown in the last few minutes, and she jumped in such a hurry that she tripped over the jury box with the edge of her skirt, upsetting all the jurymen on the heads of the crowd below. And there they lay sprawling about, reminding her very much of the glove of the goldfish she had accidentally upset the week before. Oh, I beg your pardon, she exclaimed in a tone of great dismay, and began picking them up again as quickly as she could, for the accident of the goldfish kept running in her head, and he had a vague sort of idea that they must be collected at once and put back into the jury box, or they will die. Here we have an illustration of Alice. There's Alice growing in size, and then she knocked down the box by accident. Here you see all the animals flying off the box, and then you have the parrots. They look so cute with the little the wigs. The trial cannot proceed, said the king in a very grave voice, until all the jurymen are back in their proper places. All. He repeated with great emphasis, looking hard at Alice as he said so. Alice looked at the jury box and saw that in her haste she had put the lizard in head downwards, and the poor little thing was waving its tail about in a melancholy way. Being quite unable to move, she soon got it out again and put it right. Not that it signifies much, she said to herself. I shall think it will be quite as much use in the trial, one way up as the other. As soon as the jury had a little recovered from the shock of being upset, and their slates and pencils had been found and handed back to them, they set to the work very diligently to write out a history of the accidental, all except the lizards, who seemed too much overcome to do anything but sit with its mouth open gazing up into the roof of the court. What do you know about this business? The king said to Alice. Nothing, said Alice. Nothing, whatever, persisted the king. Nothing whatever, said Alice. That's very important, the king said, turning to the jury. They were just beginning to write this down on their slates when the White Rabbit interrupted. Unimportant, your majesty means. Of course, he said in a very respectful tone, but frowning and making faces at him as he spoke. Unimportant, of course I meant, the king hastily said, and went on to himself in an undertone, important, unimportant, unimportant, important, as if he were trying which word sounded best. Some of the jury wrote it down, important, and some unimportant. Alice could see this, as she was near enough to look over their slates. But it doesn't matter a bit, she thought to herself. At this moment the king, who had been for some time busily reading in his notebook, called out silence, and read out from his book, Rule 42. All persons more than a mile high to leave the court. Everybody look at Alice. I'm not a mile high, said Alice. You are, said the king. Nearly 2 miles high, added the queen. Well, I shan't go at any rate, said Alice. Besides, that's not a regular rule, you invented it just now. It's the oldest rule in the book, said the king. Then I ought to be number 1, said Alice. The king turned pale and shut his notebook hastily. Consider your verdict, he said to the jury, in a low trembling voice. There's more evidence to come yet, please your majesty, said the White Rabbit, jumping up in a great hurry. This paper has just been picked up. What's in it? Said the queen. I haven't opened yet, said the White Rabbit, but it seems to be a letter. Written by the prisoner to somebody. It seems to have been that, said the king, unless it was written to nobody, which isn't unusual, you know. Who is it directed to? Said one of the jurymen. It isn't directed at all, said the White Rabbit. In fact, there's nothing written on the outside. He unfolded the paper as he spoke, and added, It isn't a letter after all. It's a set of verses. Are they in the prisoner's handwriting? Asked another of the jurymen. No, they're not, said the White Rabbit, and that's the queerest thing about it. The jury all looked puzzled. He must have imitated somebody else's hand, said the king. The jury all brightened up again. Please, your majesty, said the knave. I didn't write it, and they can't prove that I did. There's no name signed at the end. If you didn't sign it, said the king, that only makes the matters worse. You must have meant some mischief, or else you'd have signed your name like an honest man. There was a general clapping of hands at this. It was the first really clever thing the king had said that day. That proves his guilt, of course, said the queen. So off with it doesn't prove anything of that sort, said Alice. Why, you don't even know what they are about. Read them, said the king. The White Rabbit put on his spectacles. Where shall I begin, please your majesty, he asked. Begin at the beginning, the king said gravely, and go on until you come to the end, then stop. Very good instructions. There was dead silence in the court, whilst the White Rabbit read about these verses. They told me you had been to her, and mentioned me to him. She gave me a good character, but said I could not swim. He sent them word I had not gone. We know it to be true. If you should push the matter on, what would it become of you? I gave her 1, they gave him 2. You gave us 3 or more. They all returned from him to you, though they were mine before. If I or she should chance to be involved in this affair, he trusts to you to set them free, exactly as we were. My notion was that you had been, before she had this fit, an obstacle that came between him and ourselves and it. Don't let him know she liked them best, for this must ever be a secret kept from all the rest, between yourself and me. That's the most important piece of evidence we've had yet, said the king, rubbing his hands. So now let the jury. If any of them can explain it, said Alice. She had grown so large in the last few minutes that she wasn't a bit afraid of interrupting him. I'll give him 6 pence. I don't believe there's an atom of meaning in it. The jury all wrote down on their slates, she doesn't believe there's an atom of meaning in it, but none of them attempted to explain the paper. If there's no meaning in it, said the king, that saves a world of trouble, you know, as we needn't try to find any. And yet I don't know, he went on, spreading out the verses on his knee and looking at them with one eye. I seem to see some meaning in them after all. Said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you? He added, turning to the knave. The knave shook his head sadly. Do I look like it? He said, which he certainly did not, being made entirely of cardboard. All right, so far, said the king. And he went on muttering over the verses to himself. We know it to be true, that's the jury, of course. If she should push the matter on, that must be the queen. What will become of you? What indeed, I hear her one. They gave him 2. Why, that must be what he did with the tarts, you know. But it goes on, they all return from him to you, said Alice. Why, there they are, said the king triumphantly, pointing to the tarts on the table. Nothing can be clearer than that. Then again, before she had this fit, you never had fits, my dear, I think, he said to the queen. Never, said the queen, furiously throwing an instant at the lizard as she spoke. The unfortunate little Bill had left off writing in his slate with one finger as he found it made no mark, but he now hastily began again, using the ink that was trickling down in his face as long as it lasted. Then the words don't fit you, said. And we have a nice illustration of the king with his spectacles. The king holding his notebook. At the bottom, there's there's 3 of the parrots with his wicks, and I'm guessing there's a plate of cookies or something. The king looking round the court with a smile. There was a dead silence. It's a pun, the king added in an angry tone, and everybody laughed. Let the jury consider their verdict, the king said for about 20th time that day. No, no, said the queen. Sentence first, verdict afterwards. Stuff and nonsense, said Alice loudly. The idea of having a sentence first. Hold your tongue, said the queen, turning purple. I won't, said Alice. Off with her head, the queen shouted at the top of her voice. Nobody moved. Who cares for you, said Alice. She had grown to her full size by this time. You're nothing but a pack of cards. At this time the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees upon her face. Wake up, Alice, dear, said her sister. Why, what a long sleep you've had. Oh? I've had such a curious dream. And then there's an illustration of Alice fencing off the cards, angrily so. They're jumping at her. And all of the animals around her, said Alice. And she told her sister, as well as she could remember them all these strange adventures of hers that you have she'd been reading about. And when she had finished, her sister kissed her and said, It was a curious dream, dear, certainly, but now run it into your tea. It's getting late. So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran, as well as she might, what a wonderful dream it had been. But her sister sat still, just as she had left her, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming after a fashion, and this was her dream. First, she dreamed of a little Alice herself, and once again the tiny hands were clasped upon her knee, and the bright eager eyes were looking up into hers. She could hear the baritones of her voice and see that queer little toss of her head to keep back at the wandering hair that would always get into her eyes. And still, as she listened, or seemed to listen, the whole place around her became alive with the strange creatures of her little sister's dream. The long grass rustled at her feet as the white rabbit, hurried by the frightened mouse, splashed his way through the neighborhood pool. She could hear the rattle of the teacups as the March Hare and his friends shared their never-ending meal, and the shrill voice of the queen ordering off her unfortunate guest to execution. Once more, the big baby was sneezing on the Duchess's knee, while plates and dishes crashed around it. Once more, the shriek of the griffin, the squeaking of the lizard, slate pencils, and the choking of the suppressed guinea pigs filled the air, mixed up with the distant sobs of the miserable turtle. So she sat on with closed eyes and half believed herself in Wonderland, though she knew she had but to open them again, and all will change to dull reality. The grass will be only rustling in the wind, and the pool rippling to the waving of the reeds. The rattling teacups will change to the twinkling cheap bells, and the queen's shrill cries to the voice of the shepherd boy, and the sneeze of the baby, the trick of the griffin, and all the other queer noises will change, she knew, to the confused clamor of the busy farmyard, while the lowing of the cattle in distance will take the place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. Lastly, she pictured to herself how this same little sister of her would, in the aftertime, be herself a grown woman, and how she will keep through all her ripper years the simple and loving heart of her childhood, and how she will gather about her other little children and make their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago, and how she will feel with all their simple sorrows and find a pleasure in all their simple joys, remembering her own child life and the happy summer days. The end. Oh, there's more. Let's see, what is this? Huh, interesting. An Eastern greetings to every child who loves Alice. Is this like a letter to the reader? Shall we read it? Interesting. Let me take a quick sip. That was a very nice book. I never read it before. At least not the original one. I know how to emote now. I just realized that when I pout, it brings my blush, but it's missing a shader there. It looks so silly. Nice. That was very nice. Okay. Let's see. Well, we still have plenty of time. So why don't we read it then? An Easter greeting to every child who loves Alice. I'm a child who loves Alice. Yeah. Dear child, please to fancy, if you can, that you are reading a real letter from a real friend who you have seen and whose voice you can seem to yourself to hear, wishing you, as I do now, with all my heart, a happy Easter. Oh, we're a little bit early on Easter. Do you know that delicious dreamy feeling when one first wakes on a summer morning with the twitter of birds in the air? Oh my goodness, twitter. And the fresh breeze coming in at the open window, when lying lazily, with eyes half shut, one sees as in a dream green, boughs waving or waters rippling in a golden light. It is a pleasure very near a sadness, bringing tears to one's eyes, like a beautiful picture or poem. And is not that a mother's gentle hand that undraws your curtains, and a mother's sweet voice that summons you to rise? To rise and forget in the bright sunlight, and the ugly dreams that frightened you when all was dark, to rise and enjoy another happy day, first kneeling to thank that unseen friend who sends you a beautiful son? Are these strange words from a writer of such a tale as Alice? And is this a strange letter to find a book of nonsense? It may be so. Some, perhaps, may blame me for thus mixing together things grave and grey and gay. Others may smile and think of it odd that any of one should speak of solemn things at all, except in church and on a Sunday. But I think, nay, I am sure that some children will read this gently and lovingly, and in the spirit in which I have written it. For I do not believe God means us to divide life into two halves, to wear a grave face on Sunday, and to think it out of place to even so much as mention him on a weekday. Do you think he cares to see only kneeling figures, and to hear only tones of prayer, and that he does not also love to see the lambs leaping in the sunlight, and to hear the merry voices of the children as they roll among the hay? Surely the innocent laughter is as sweet in his ears as the grandest anthem that ever rolled up from the dim religious light of some solemn cathedral. And if I have written anything to add to those stories of innocent and healthy amusement that are laid up in books for the children, I love so well it's surely something I may hope to look back upon without shame and sorrow, as how much a fly must then be recalled when my turn comes to walk through the valley of shadows. This eastern sun will rise on you, dear child, feeling your life in every limb, and eager to rush out into the fresh morning air. And many eastern day will come and go before it finds you feeble and grey-headed, creeping wearily out to bask once more in the sunlight. But it is so good, even now, to think sometimes of that great morning when the Son of Righteousness shall arise with the healing in his wings. Surely your gladness need to be of the less for the thought that you will one day see a brighter dawn than this, when lovelier sights will meet your eyes than any waving trees or rippling waters, when angels' hands shall undraw your curtains, and sweeter tones than ever loving mother breathed shall wake you to a new and glorious day, and when all the sadness and the sin that darkened life in this little earth shall be forgotten like the dreams of a night that is past. Your affectionate friend, Lewis Carroll, Easter 1876. Wow. More than 100 years. And then there's a coffee stain. Just kidding. Oh my goodness, there's more. Christmas greeting. From a fairy to a child. Hi, beanbag person. Welcome to the stream. What is the question mark for? Are you confused? We just finished reading Alice in Wonderland, part 2. So now we're just reading... Yes, it is a very lovely note. We're just finishing the last extra notes. But let's read the Christmas greeting. From a fairy to a starlight. Lady dear, if fairies may, for a moment lay aside cunning tricks and elfish flay, 'tis at happy Christmas tide. We have heard the children say, gentle children whom we love, long ago on Christmas Day came a message from above. Still as Christmas tide comes around, they remember it again. Echoes still the joyful sound, peace on earth, goodwill to men. Yet the hearts must childlike be, where such a heavenly guest abide. Unto children in their glee, all the year is Christmas tide. Thus forgetting tricks and play, for a moment, lady dear, We will wish you, if we may, Merry Christmas, Glad New Year. Christmas 1887. Very nice. Printed in Great Britain by Richard Clay and Sons, Limited, Bungay, Suffolk. And here we have more works by him. The lesser known works of Lewis Carroll. Of course, we have Alice in Adventures in Wonderland. Oh, illustrated by Pot 8BO. Nice. We can probably look his illustrations. Throughout the looking glass and what Alice found there. Is there like a... What? Is this the second... Is this like a second part of Alice in Wonderland? The Hunting of the Snark, Phantasmagoria, and other poems. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, with 42 illustrations by Tenniel. First published in 1865. Okay, so I'm guessing the first one was without illustrations. The same People's Edition. The same Illustrated Pocket Classics. The same Children's Edition. And then the same Throughout the Looking Glass and the What Alice Found, with 50 illustrations. Nice. And the same People's Edition. Nice. Oh, so here we're just repeating the same thing. And then we have a nice ending page and the leather cover. Nice. That completes the book. Let's go to the beginning of the illustrations, where the king is sentencing everyone in the court. Just looking at it one more time. I've always wondered what this thing is. I've seen it so many times in many different places. Why are they holding this? It's usually a gold ball or something. Why are they holding it? I'll probably look it up after stream. But that reminded me of that. Maybe I should have a ball like that in my avatar. But no matter. Well, guys, that was the end of the book, which means it's also the end of the stream. Thank you guys for coming so much. I really appreciate it. It was a very fun read, but it has come to an end. Like I said in the past, I'm a little split about reading more books, because I do like it personally. I really love reading to you guys, but I know it doesn't do very well. I know everyone is excited about games, and it almost feels like whenever we read something, it's like we waste the whole day just because we're trying to read something instead of playing a game. In fact, I'm actually considering maybe streaming after this reading stream, because otherwise it feels like a whole day will go to waste. I don't know. That's just how I feel, I guess. But yeah, it was a very nice read. I really appreciate you guys for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And let's see, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow we're gonna be playing a mix of games, actually. We're gonna be playing 2 games. It's gonna be the first time that I stream 2 different games. Omori in the morning, or at least at noon EST, and then Ao Oni afterwards, after 2 hours or so. So it's gonna be a 2D mayhem tomorrow, and I'm very excited to start playing those games again. So I hope you guys looked forward to that. Especially Ao Oni, I think it's a very exciting story, and hopefully maybe we can finish it tomorrow. That'd be very cool. But nonetheless, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. I love you all. Take care, okay? Have a nice rest of your day. Bye bye.
しくたおやかに輝くひとときで耳を澄まし聞こえる